Hello guys, Bud here with Dependable Lawn Care, and today we are going to be doing the hydraulic service, the hydraulic oil and filter change on the Z3X mowers. So before we jump right into that, we'll talk real quick about the maintenance schedule on these. When you buy these machines new, there's an initial 100-hour break-in period on the hydraulic oil, and then the hydraulic oil and filters get changed at the 100-hour mark, or at least they're supposed to. And then after that, it's every 400 hours or once a year. So I purchased these machines spring of last year, 2019. I did my first 100 hours and then took it to the dealership and had the hydraulic oil and filters changed. And then right now I'm at the 1 year mark from when I had the initial oil change done. I'm not quite at the 500-hour mark, which would be the next 400 hours. In fact, let's see, this mower's at 451, and I believe this one, the 52-inch Z3X, is at 430, so 430.9. So they're not quite at the 500-hour mark, but they are at the 1 year mark. And especially on the 61, I've noticed that the hydraulic oils, it's just getting pretty dirty looking, you know, burnt looking. So these are your reservoir tanks. You have a tank for each hydro, and then obviously you have a right side and a left side rear hydro. Be showing you all that in detail. It's underneath that access plate. So what we're going to do, guys, is I'm going to walk you through the process as I change the hydraulic oil and filters on both mowers. I'll just video one for you to show you all the steps. So this is what you're going to need as far as tools and supplies to do the hydro oil change on the Z3X mower. You're going to need 2 gallons of the oil, the 20W50, which we'll talk about. You're going to need 2 filter kits, which we will also talk about. I'm using an impact. You could use an impact, or you can just use a socket wrench with a 1/2-inch socket. Doesn't need to be a deep well. That's just what I had on hand. That was quick access. I have a 1/4-inch wrench with 2 extensions, which ends up being about 6 inches, and a 7/16 socket. You're not going to need all of these extensions the whole time, but you will need it for one specific part. I've got a 1/2-inch wrench with a 1 1/8 inch socket. You will need a 1/2 inch, and it actually wouldn't be a bad idea to have a breaker bar with that. And also, you're going to want a torque wrench, which I don't have, but you'll want a torque wrench. And this does not need to be a deep well. You could do this step with a regular socket. It just needs to be an inch and 1/8, but it could be a regular socket, not a deep well. A pair of pliers or a pair of channel locks would be fine. You're going to need 2 funnels. You could do it with 1, but it's going to be a lot faster if you have 2 funnels. This funnel has a 3/4 inch opening. It's like a 1 inch outside diameter, and that actually works out really good. That's about the perfect size for this. And some shop towels. Personally, I think I went through about 3 or 4 of these shop towels during this process. You'll also need, you're either going to have to use a jack, or in my case, I used a couple of ramps. The ramps worked out really great and eliminated the need for a jack. And you'll also need a drain pan for your oil, and you're going to be draining about 2 gallons of oil, so you want a drain pan that can handle more than 2 gallons of 20W50 oil, or you're going to have a mess, which I did. I made a big mess because mine held exactly 2 gallons. Well, then I couldn't move it without spilling some oil. So there you go, guys. That's what you need. Now this is just the brand that my dealer carries. You don't have to use this brand. It just has to be the right. Zoom in here so you can see the classifications. But it is a all-year 20W50 engine oil, API class, and then I won't read off all the rest of that. You can see that for yourself. So that's the oil you're going to need. And then you'll want the Briggs & Stratton filter kit. And the reason that it's a filter kit is because it doesn't just have the filter. So it has the filter and it has the O-ring for the lid, which I'll show you that. You actually take off a lid or a cover plate to get to the filter, and the O-ring has to be replaced on that. So this has the filter and the O-ring, and obviously you're going to need 2 of those, 1 for each side. So we have what we need. The first thing I'm going to do is set up ramps, and we're going to back the mower up onto the ramps. And what that's going to do is get the back end of the mower up, which will give me access underneath. I've set the park brake. It's also a good idea to chock the front wheels when you have this up on ramps or stands, depending on what you're using and how you're doing it. Next thing I'm going to do is take off this access plate, which is the 2 bolts, and that's going to give me an opening to the filters. These bolts are 1/2 inch. So with that cover off, now you guys can get a better look at the hydro gears. And that's actually the filter housing. So you have your left side and your right side, and it's going to take a socket to take the cover off. And of course I need to get my oil pan ready to go. So we'll get all of that going here. Before I do that, I've also got some rags right here. Good idea to have a few rags on hand. So what I'm going to need to do is wipe down real good around the caps to make sure there's no dust or dirt. You don't want any of that stuff getting into your tanks. Anytime you take these lids off, you have to clean that off really good. And then I'm going to loosen both of these caps. I don't know which tank it is that's going to be draining first. As soon as it starts to go down, I'll know. But basically you want those caps loosened up so that the oil can flow, and it's going to have to pull air in to do that. So I wiped down really good around the reservoir lids, and then I unscrewed the reservoir lids. I did leave them on to make sure that nothing gets into the reservoir, but they are completely unscrewed so that they've got ventilation now for the fluid to drain out. So the next step is to remove the cover on the filter housing. So got you guys set up for that, and we'll go ahead and remove that. Now we're just removing the cover for now. We're not removing the filter until all the fluid has drained out. So there's the cover. And then you have this O-ring that runs right here. We're going to be taking that O-ring off. I'm going to wipe this down real good. Take that O-ring off and replace it with the new O-ring. So I can show you that real quick. See where the O-ring sits. And it's just a rubber O-ring. So we're going to remove the old one and discard it. Everything about this procedure, guys, it's very, very important that that you keep everything clean. You don't want any kind of debris of any kind in this hydro system. So let's see which tank is draining now that we've got the fluid running out. Okay, well, so we just learned something together. The front tank is completely empty, and the back tank, I don't know if you can see that, but it still has some fluid in it, even though it's setting at an angle. So the front tank is the left side hydro, which means the back tank is the right side hydro. So that's good to know. While we're waiting on the fluid to run out, there's the new hydro filter. And the new O-ring. So we can go ahead and put the new O-ring on. It's all back in place and seated. It has a groove that it sets in. And so it's all back in place and ready to go. Now this little piece right here, we should be able to grab hold of that with some pliers to pull it out, pull the old one out. So it looks like most of the fluid has drained out, so we're going to go ahead and remove the filter and replace it with the new one. Alright, now that the old filter is out, there's some more fluid draining, so we'll go ahead and let that run out, just to make sure that we have as much of the old fluid out as possible. I'll show you guys real quick what it looks like up in there. All of the fluid that's going to come out is out. So let's go ahead and put our new filter in. Okay, went in a lot easier than it came out. And then, of course, our cap, it's all cleaned up with the new O-ring on it. So we're going to go ahead and put that back on. Okay, and then we'll tighten that up and repeat the process on the other side. What I did was I just tightened the cap back up as tight as it was when I took it off. The actual torque specifications on the cap, on the lid, is 480 to 580 foot-pounds of torque. So if you have a torque wrench and you want to get it exact, 480 to 580 foot-pounds of torque on the tightening the cap. Okay, so this side is drained. We're going to move to the other side and repeat the process. I won't video that. Just repeat the process on the other side, and then we'll get into the next step. This is probably one of the trickiest parts of this whole process, and that is getting to the vent bolt or vent screw and releasing it. And I'm going to show you where it's at, and I'm going to show you what I use to get to it. But it is tricky. So I'm going to get the camera in here. Now, if you follow the hose down on the right side, you'll see that bolt. Now, all you can see is the head of it. It's a 7/16 bolt, and it's the only bolt that's going to be right beside the hose. It's in the same position on both sides of the mower, both hydros. Now, the instructions will tell you to remove that bolt. That's your vent. Remove that bolt, and then you're going to fill up the hydraulic fluid until it comes out of that bolt hole, and then you're going to tighten it up. And that bleeds most of the air out of the hydro itself. Okay? I'm going to tell you, don't remove that. Loosen it up. You know, at least loosen it up a few turns so that air can escape. But if you remove that, you're probably not going to be able to get it back in there. And the reason why is because I can't even get my fingers down to it from down below or up above. And here's what I've got. This is my 1/4 inch wrench with 2 1/4 inch extensions and a 7/16 socket. Okay, and let me get it on there. Now for this side, you don't need all the extensions. It's on the bolt right now. I've already loosened it up. But on the other side, you have the safety brake. This bar and this lever right here, all of that is your safety brake, or part of your safety brake. So I'll show you why I have to have all these extensions. This is how you have to get to it on this side. And again, I've already loosened it. But I'm just showing you guys this is how you get to it. And honestly, okay, there, it's on. I can't even see the bolt on this side. I tried to get to an angle where I could see it, but I just couldn't find an angle where I could see it. So I basically just had to feel for it with the wrench until I found the head, and I loosened it up a few rotations, and I'm just probably going to leave the wrench there. Now, with those extensions, I could probably hold on to the extension and loosen and tighten the bolt now that it's broken loose. But again, I am not going to remove those bolts. I'm just loosening them up to allow air to escape, and then we're going to go ahead and start putting the fluid in our reservoirs to get the system topped off as much as we can. Just let me reiterate, guys, when you open that bolt up, do not turn it more than 2 turns. Okay, that bolt is only about 1/4 of an inch long, and it's got an O-ring on it. And all you've got to do is unscrew it a couple turns just to be able to let air escape, basically to break the seal on that O-ring. You do not want to back it out any more than that, because you just don't have room to get your hands in there to thread the bolt back in. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is come around here to our reservoirs, and again, you want to make sure these are extremely clean. Wipe everything down really good before you take the cap off, and I even wipe it down as I'm taking the cap off just to make sure I don't let anything get in there. But we'll put a funnel in both of these, and we'll go ahead and start adding fluid. And basically what we're going to do is fill this reservoir about halfway up and let it drain down, and then fill it up and let it drain down, because we don't want to end up with the reservoir overfilled. Okay, now you noticed I went ahead and filled it to the top this first time because what we're waiting on is for this fluid to go through the hoses, get down to the pumps, and fill the pumps up until it starts to come out around those bolts that I was showing you, those vent holes. So we have to let the fluid come out of those vent holes first, which tells us that the hydros are full, and then we can continue filling to fill up the hoses and finish topping it off. So initially I know it's going to take more than just half of that tank. I mean, we drained out 2 gallons of fluid, so it's going to take that much to fill it back up, right? So that's the first fill up, and now we just have to give it time to settle, and I'll just let you guys know about how much time it takes. Hey guys, so it's only been a few minutes, literally 3 or 4 minutes, and we're already halfway down. I'm not seeing any fluid down at the vent bolts yet, but I just wanted to show you, it's a good idea since I'm outside especially. I draped a clean shop cloth over the funnels so that nothing can get in the funnels, you know, any kind of, well, bugs or dust or anything that might be in the air, especially because I'm outside. I want to really keep those containers clean, free of contaminants. So I just wanted to show you that real quick, and as you can see, that's going down quite a bit faster than I expected, honestly. So it may not take that long to get the system filled back up. I filled those containers, those reservoirs, completely up. So from empty to full, I filled them both up 4 times. The front one, I filled it up a 5th time, and it was a little too much, but I still have to go through the air purging, and so hopefully that will use up enough oil that it'll be okay. If not, I can always siphon a little bit out of it. So basically both reservoirs, the back one took about 3.5 fill-ups, and the front one took about 4.5 fill-ups. And the reason it takes more is because it has to, the hose runs alongside the first hydro, and then it cuts across the machine over to the other side, and so it just takes more fluid basically to fill the hose, is what it amounts to. I've used right at 2 gallons at this point of the 20W50, and so we're ready to move on to the next step, which is purging the air from the system. Alright guys, so we're about to start purging the air from the system, and I'm going to walk you through that procedure. But before you do that, make sure that you've already closed and tightened both of those vent nuts or vent bolts. As soon as you see fluid starting to seep out of the top of those, you go ahead and close them and tighten them up. They're not super tight, okay? It's just a little bit of tightness with a 1/4 inch wrench. You don't want to twist those off. They're very small. So once those are closed and you top off the fluid in your reservoirs, which mine are overfilled right now, and I'm hoping that this is going to use up some of that fluid, but if not, I'm going to have to extract some of that fluid from the reservoir. But ideally you want to have it filled to about the fill line on your reservoir tank. So those are both closed and tightened, both of the vents. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pad back down, and the next thing I've got to do to purge the system is, there we go, you have to unlock the hydro gears. So this is what you would do. You would pull those out and push them down into place. This is what you would do if you were going to be pushing the mower by hand. That's how you disengage the hydros. So what you want to do is disengage the hydros, and then the next step is we're going to start the machine, and we're going to move the levers forward and backwards slowly about 6 times together, back and forth slowly about 6 times. And then after we've done that, then we're going to shut it down, check the fluid level, and then we're going to re-engage the hydros and do that same step again. And so when I do that step, I'll actually need to go ahead and go off the ramps if it's got the drive to do it. So this is my first time doing this, so we're gonna kind of learn this step together, and I'm just gonna set up the camera, show you what I'm doing. so that wasn't bad at all. The initial purging with the hydros disengaged seemed to have gotten all of the air out of the system because it's operating completely normal. As soon as I pulled off of the jack stands, I could feel and tell that it was normal. It's quiet. That is one sign that you've got air in the system if your hydros are noisy, and it's not noisy at all. So now I've got to do a final check on the hydro oil level, check for any leaks, and put the cover back on, the back guard cover that goes where your toes are at when you're riding. And that's it, guys. As long as we don't have any leaks and everything's put back together, we're ready to go and we're done. Like I said, I'm going to put my guard back on, but before I do, I'm going to check and make sure I don't have any leaks at either hydro. Where you want to check for leaks at would be around the bottom, right in this area on the filter housings. Make sure that you don't have any kind of residue or anything there. So you're gonna, after you put that all together, you want to wipe that with a cloth, make sure it's already clean. But other than that, as long as we don't have any drips or any leaks anywhere, we're good to go. We're back in business. So I'll get this guard back on, and you know, for the next day that I'm using the mower, I'll keep a close eye on the reservoirs and make sure that they don't go down. And if they do, just add fluid as needed. But other than that, guys, we're all done. Job complete. So as always, thanks for watching. Hope this helps you guys if you're doing your own maintenance, especially a hydro oil change. So get out there and make some money, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.